The update was mandatory. Now, billions are smiling meat puppets, their minds devoured by the swarm. We, the outcasts who carved the chips out of our own flesh. My ship is a rusting scrap heap without a single processor. It's a suicide run, but it's the only place a soul ca not be hacked. We, going dark. The stars beyond the viewport refused to twinkle. They hung there, frozen pinpricks against velvet blackness, and Captain Elias Thorne preferred them this way. Honest. No atmospheric shimmer to lie about distance or trajectory. He pulled the yellow flannel cloth from his coverall pocket, removed his horn-rimmed glasses, and began the familiar ritual of cleaning. The lenses were scratched to hell, thick as bottle bottoms, but they were his. No cybernetic interfaces. No augmented overlays. His own eyes, seeing the universe raw and unfiltered. 10 years ago, the Galactic Council had given humanity an ultimatum: integrate the mandatory AI loyalty protocols into their neural systems or leave Council space. Earth had refused. They called it principles. The Council had called it barbarism. Either way, humanity packed up and went home, labeled as primitives too stubborn to embrace progress. Funny how things changed. 3 weeks ago, the swarm arrived. A cybernetic race that did not negotiate, did not communicate, just consumed. They hacked the Council's AI-controlled fleet in minutes, turned every smart ship into a puppet dancing on digital strings. Billions died before anyone understood what was happening. The galaxy's greatest strength, its interconnected network of artificial intelligence, became a noose around its own neck. Now here Thorne sat, on the bridge of the Iron Mule, hauling the same Council's cargo through hell because his ship was too stupid to be hacked. No AI. No neural networks. Just hydraulics, vacuum tubes, and 70 years of accumulated spite holding her together. The irony tasted better than whiskey. The bridge hummed its usual song around him, low-frequency vibrations from the hull, the rhythmic tick-tick-tick of analog relays, the occasional groan of stressed metal. Music to his ears. Thorne held the glasses up to the amber glow of the Nixie tubes, checking for smudges, then settled them back on his broad nose. Behind him, Counselor Vax made a sound like a wounded animal. Thorne glanced over his shoulder. The Ilari diplomat sat rigid in the co-pilot's seat, alabaster skin gone violet around the temples where his neuroports jutted out like chrome thorns. Those impossibly long fingers twitched in the air, tapping invisible keyboards, phantom typing queries into networks no longer there. The creature's whole body vibrated with need. How much longer? Vax's voice came out monotone despite the clear distress. His lilac eyes, usually hidden behind shimmering AR lenses, stared blankly at the viewport. Without the network feeding him data, those eyes looked empty. Dead. 3 hours to archive station, Thorne said. He shifted in his captain's chair, leather cracked and foam poking through, and planted his magnetic boots more firmly on the diamond plate deck. Maybe 4. Assuming we survive. Unacceptable variance. Vax's fingers danced faster. I require connection to the galactic neural net. The lockdown protocol upload is time-sensitive. Information deprivation syndrome will compromise my ability to, tough. Thorne cut him off, not unkindly, but final. Where we going, one signal gets us killed faster than vacuum exposure. Your precious network brought the swarm down on your heads. Now you want me to light up like a beacon so they can find us easier. The Ilari's face remained expressionless, but his hands clenched into fists, forcing the phantom movements to stop. Sweat, or whatever passed for it in his species, beaded on that porcelain forehead. Thorne had seen withdrawal before, back on Mars when miners got cut off from their feed. Ugly business. But necessary. The mission was simple enough in theory: deliver Vax to the isolated archive station deep in what used to be Council territory. The station held the master codes for a network-wide lockdown protocol, something that could theoretically cut the swarm off from the systems it was busy assimilating. One problem, the whole sector between here and there was now swarm hunting grounds. Every smart ship that tried the run got hacked before making it halfway. Which was why the council came crawling back to the humans they de-exiled. Turns out primitive technology had its advantages when the enemy could turn your computers against you. Thorne reached for the speaking tube mounted beside his chair, brass tarnished from decades of use. "Gene, what's our position?" Static crackled, then Navigator Gene's voice filtered through, thin and nervous. ".7 clicks from the boundary, Captain. Crossing into the dead sector in 2 minutes. Copy." Thorne hung the tube back on its hook. Vax's head snapped toward him. "The dead sector. You certain this route is?" "No," Thorne interrupted. "I'm not certain. But every other route is crawling with swarm patrols using quantum scanners. They detect your fancy suit's processors before we got within 10 light-years of Archive Station. At least this way, we gambling instead of committing suicide. My analysis suggests, your analysis can wait." Thorne leaned forward, grabbed a heavy switch on the console, and hesitated. "Might want to hold on to something." He threw the switch. The bridge's standard lighting died. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in dim amber and red. More switches followed, Thorne's calloused hands moving with practiced efficiency, killing the auxiliary AI systems one by one. Each shutdown produced a dying whine, musical notes of technology giving up its ghost. The environmental controls went from climate-managed comfort to bare minimum life support. Within seconds, the temperature began its crawl toward freezing. Vax gasped as his suit's augmented reality finally crashed, taking with it every overlay, every data stream, every comfortable abstraction between himself and raw reality. The Alari's breathing quickened, chest rising and falling in what might have been panic. "Welcome to analog," Thorne muttered. He felt the deck beneath his boots, reading vibrations the way other men read screens. The mule was old, cantankerous, held together with spite and spot welds, but she talked to him. Every shudder, every groan had meaning. The chronometer on his wrist, mechanical, spring wound, reliable, ticked toward the boundary. "This is insane," Vax whispered. "Without active sensors, without navigation computers, the probability of successfully traversing swarm territory is better than it was for your fleet," Thorne said flatly. "How do all those smart systems work out for you?" "Oh right. They opened the airlocks and vented half the council's population into space." Vax fell silent. "Score 1 for brutal honesty." "Crossing now," Gene's voice squeaked through the tube. Nothing dramatic happened. No flash of light, no sudden change. The dead sector was an absence, not a presence. An emptiness where the galactic neural net refused to reach, where only the swarm's quantum sensors prowled, searching for the digital signatures of living ships. Thorne pushed himself up from the captain's chair and moved to the navigation table. His joints protested, the arthritis that came from too many years in variable gravity, too many rapid pressure changes. He ignored it the way he ignored most discomfort, as background noise not worth acknowledging. From a locked cabinet beneath the table, he retrieved a tube. Old-fashioned cardboard, sealed with wax. He broke the seal, satisfying crack, and unrolled genuine paper across the scarred metal surface. The star chart smelled like libraries and museums, places Thorne rarely visited. Places where things were kept safe behind glass instead of used until they broke. Vax materialized at his shoulder, moving with that eerie alien grace despite his obvious distress. Those violet-tinged eyes scanned the map, and something like horror crossed his face. "You navigating with paper?" "Not a question. An accusation." "Yep. The probability of fatal navigation error using such primitive methods is 94%, with a margin of, ICA not here percentages." Thorne pulled out a pencil, actual graphite, none of that digital stylus garbage, and made a mark on the chart. But I can hear asteroids scraping my hull. Can your algorithms tell you what that sounds like? Vax opened his mouth, closed it. His fingers started their phantom typing again. Thorn retrieved his mechanical chronometer from his other wrist pocket, wound it with 3 precise clicks, and set it beside the chart. The tick-tick-tick joined the symphony of the bridge's analog heartbeat. He pulled a protractor and a slide rule from his pocket, tools his father's father had used before automation made such skills obsolete. Obsolete. But not useless. Not anymore. There. He marked a course, factored in drift, calculated burn time using nothing but memory and mathematics older than spaceflight. We go dark, run on inertia through the belt. If the swarm's out there, we'll be nothing but a cold rock to their sensors. If. Vax latched onto the word like a drowning man grabbing wreckage. You do not know if they re-present. You risking the entire mission on guesswork and outdated methodology. The council entrusted me with the lockdown protocol because everyone with a neural implant is either dead or working for the enemy now, Thorn interrupted. And I'm risking this mission on experience. Flew these routes for 20 years before your council decided humans were not civilized enough for their precious space lanes. We had legitimate concerns about human resistance to neural integration. You were scared we'd say no to your mind control. Thorn rolled up the chart. Turns out we were right to be paranoid. Now your concerns are my problem, and I'm solving it the only way I know how. Manually. A burst of static from the speaking tube made both of them flinch. Captain. Jean's voice carried a new quality. Fear, sharp and immediate. Passive sonar's picking up something. Big. Really big. Thorn's hand found the tube before conscious thought caught up. How big? Gravitational disturbance, massive scale. Rhythmic pulses. Captain, it's scanning. Quantum frequency. The words hung in the cold air. Vax's face went from violet pale to bone white. Thorn closed his eyes, counted 3 heartbeats, opened them. The apex. Not a question this time. He moved to the sensor station, Jean's domain, a nest of oscilloscopes and analog readouts that predated quantum computing by centuries. Green lines spiked across phosphorescent screens, painting peaks and valleys of gravity wells and spatial distortions. And there, unmistakable, a pattern. Regular as a metronome. The signature of the Swarm's flagship, a dreadnought-class Leviathan probing space for anything with a digital pulse. Distance? Thorn asked. Jean's finger trembled as it traced the screen. 300,000 clicks. Closing slowly. She's hunting, Captain. Vax lunged for the communications console, those long fingers flying toward the transmitter controls. We must identify ourselves. Standard diplomatic protocol requires immediate. Thorn caught him by the wrist. Easy enough, Ilari bones were hollow, lightweight, fragile as bird skeletons. He squeezed, not hard, but firm. Vax gasped. Touch that transmitter and I pitch you out the airlock. Thorn's voice dropped to gravel, scraping. The swarm does not negotiate. They assimilate. You send one signal, even automated identification, and they upload synchro code through our comm array. Turn us into drones before we can blink. Your mission fails, archive station stays locked, and the swarm keeps eating the galaxy. That's illogical. But Vax stopped struggling. Galactic law states, the swarm does not care about laws. Thorn released him, moved to the power distribution panel. They care about efficiency. And right now, the most efficient thing is for us to not exist. He began throwing more switches. The main reactor dampened with a deep, subsonic moan that Thorn felt in his bones. Life support systems dropped to absolute minimum. The temperature, already cold, plummeted. Their breath began to fog. "What are you doing?" Vax hugged himself, that pristine white suit doing nothing against the sudden chill. "Going dead." Thorn watched the readout spin down, watched their energy signature drop toward background radiation. "We become a rock. Cold, quiet, invisible. It's called playing possum, and it's kept me alive through 3 wars. The probability of successful thermal camouflage against quantum sensors is, still better than surrendering." Thorn settled back into his chair. The leather was ice against his back now. "Strap in. We about to play statue." The iron mule drifted, momentum carrying her forward on nothing but inertia and prayer. The engine's comforting roar died to a whisper, then silence. The bridge lights dimmed to almost nothing, only the faintest glow from essential instruments. Thorn's chronometer ticked. Vax's breathing came rapid and shallow, visible clouds in the frigid air. Minutes crawled by. "Captain," Jean whispered through the tube, voice crackling. "It's changing course. The apex is, oh God, it's coming closer." Thorn said nothing. His hands rested on his knees, absolutely still. He'd learned this stillness in the Navy, during his first patrol in hostile space. The ability to wait, to breathe slow and shallow, to become as inanimate as the bulkheads around him. "We should run," Vax hissed. His suit's internal lights were dying, battery conserving power, leaving his face half-shadowed. "Engage engines, full burn, exit vector, no." Single syllable. Final. "But the mission survives if we do. Heat signature would light us up like a solar flare. We run, we die. We sit still, we might live. Your council hired me because I've done this before. So sit there, shut up, and let me work." "Might." The word echoed in the freezing silence. Entering the belt, Jean reported, voice barely audible. "Asteroids on all vectors. Captain, without shields." "I know." Thorn did know. Without the energy shields humming their protective barrier, the mule's hull was naked steel and ceramic composite. One decent-sized rock would punch through like a bullet through paper. But shields generated heat, and heat meant detection, and detection meant death. The first impact sounded like a gunshot. Then another. Then a dozen more, overlapping, creating a staccato rhythm of death knocking on their door. Small stones, micrometeorites, fragments of ancient planets ground to dust by time and gravity. Each hit made Vax flinch. Each hit made Thorn's jaw clench tighter. But the hull held. Gravitational turbulence, Jean's voice rose in pitch. The apex's mass is distorting local space. We being pulled, the iron mule lurched sideways. Coffee, cold now, sloshed in its mug on Thorn's console. Vax yelped as his restraint harness caught him. Thorn's hands shot to the manual controls, found the wheel, gripped cold metal. The ship tilted hard to port. Alarms would be screaming if they were still powered. Instead, there was only the groan of stressed metal, the screech of magnetic boots failing to compensate for the sudden angle. Thorn's boots held, locked to the deck, and he threw his weight against the wheel. 210 pounds of muscle and bone versus a multi-thousand-ton vessel caught in a gravity well. The hydraulics were offline to reduce noise, meaning every adjustment was pure mechanical force transmitted through gears and cables older than Thorn himself. He hauled on the wheel, veins bulging on his forearms, teeth clenched until his jaw ached. The mule responded. Sluggish, reluctant, but she responded. The deck leveled out by degrees. Thorn's shoulders burned. His back screamed protest. Did not matter. He held the course, adjusted for drift, compensated for forces trying to tear them apart. Beside him, Vax hung limp in his harness like a puppet with cut strings. Those hollow bones could not handle the G-forces. The Ilari's head lolled, consciousness flickering, while Thorn wrestled physics into submission through nothing but old-fashioned leverage and stubbornness. Contact. Jean's voice broke. Visual on the apex. Thorn did not have attention to spare, but his eyes flicked to the forward viewport. What he saw made something cold and ancient wake in his gut. The dreadnought drifted past their position at what had to be 3 clicks distance, point-blank range in cosmic terms. It was not a ship. Ships had character, personality, the marks of their builders. The apex of logic was geometry made manifest, a perfect cube of mirror-black material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. City-sized. Impossibly smooth. Not a rivet, not a seam, not a single indication of how it had been built or by whom. Blue laser fans swept the asteroid field in precise patterns, probing every shadow, every tumbling rock. One beam passed within meters of the mule's hull. For an instant, the bridge lit up in sapphire luminescence, Jean's terrified face, Vax's unconscious profile, Thorn's weathered hands white-knuckled on the wheel. Then darkness again. The apex continued its slow drift, massive engines leaving ion trails that bent space itself. The gravitational turbulence ebbed. The wheel loosened in Thorn's grip as the forces trying to tear them loose faded. The dreadnought slipped behind an asteroid horizon, disappearing from view. Thorn held his position for another full minute, counting heartbeats, before he finally released the wheel. His hands cramped immediately. He flexed his fingers, working feeling back into them, and allowed himself one long exhale that fogged white in the frigid air. "Jean," he said into the tube. "Status. Clear. I think. Captain, I think it passed us." Thorn permitted himself a tight smile, more grimace than expression of joy. He reached under his seat, found his flask, dented steel, warm from body heat, and unscrewed the cap. The whiskey burned going down, synthetic rotgut from Mars orbital, but it chased some of the cold from his bones. He offered the flask to Jean through the speaking tube mount. "Take a sip, navigator. You earned it." A pause, then, "Thank you, sir." Vax stirred, consciousness returning in stages. Those alien eyes focused with difficulty on Thorn. "We survived. Looks like." Thorn took another sip before capping the flask. "Grandfather's methods work sometimes." The Ilari's suit was attempting to reboot local diagnostics, throwing pale blue light across his features. His expression remained neutral, but something shifted in those eyes. Not quite respect. Not quite understanding. But acknowledgement. "Your physical prowess and mechanical compensation exceeded predicted parameters," Vax said, which might have been the closest thing to a compliment his species knew. "I calculate human intuition plus acceptable risk tolerance produced survival probability of 17%. Against my initial assessment of 6%. I'll take it." Thorn shifted in his chair, bones popping. Every muscle ached. He was not 20 anymore. Was not 40 anymore either. But the job did not care about age. Neither did the galaxy, apparently. 2 hours to archive station if we maintain this heading. "You'll get your lockdown protocol uploaded, assuming we do not, Captain," Vax said, and for the first time since boarding, his monotone voice held genuine emotion. "Terror. Captain, there's a thermal anomaly." "Where?" Thorn was already moving, fatigue forgotten. "Stern section. Maneuvering thruster port 7. The insulation, during the meteorite impacts, something cracked." Vax's fingers flew across his interface, magnifying sensor data. "The temperature differential is minimal. 0.8 degrees Celsius above ambient. To human sensors, negligible. But to quantum detection arrays." He did not need to finish. Thorn understood immediately. He lunged for the rear periscope, optical only, no electronics to betray them, and trained it back along their trajectory. At first, nothing. Darkness and distant stars and tumbling rocks. Then movement. The apex of logic had stopped its slow drift. Those massive engines flared, brilliant points of blue-white fusion fire. The geometric nightmare began to turn, smooth and graceful as a hunting shark changing direction. Toward them. No, Thorn breathed. An alarm shrieked, the only one still connected to backup batteries, the one they could not silence without tools. Red warning lights strobed across the bridge, painting everything in bloody illumination. Vax's suit display lit up with text in Alari script, but Thorn did not need translation. Target lock detected. The dead sector's silence shattered. The hunt had begun. Thorn's hand ripped the safety seal off the emergency afterburner lever. The thin wire snapped with a metallic ping, and for one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the Iron Mule woke up angry. Deep in her guts, the diesel nuclear hybrid reactor bellowed like a caged animal finally released. The deck bucked beneath Thorn's boots. Every rivet in the bulkheads rattled. The sound, God, the sound, was prehistoric, industrial, a grinding roar that belonged in a factory, not the silence of space. Black smoke belched from the exhaust ports, visible through the rear camera feed as a sooty plume against the stars. The ship leaped forward. Thorn's spine crushed into the captain's chair. His vision tunneled. The G-forces hit like a sledgehammer, 5, 6, maybe 7 times Earth normal, and the disabled inertial dampeners did nothing to soften the blow. His jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. Blood rushed from his head, and darkness crept at the edges of his sight. Beside him, Vax screamed. High-pitched, alien, terrified. The Alari's hollow-boned frame was not built for this kind of abuse. His head lolled, arms pinned to the armrests by invisible weight, fingers no longer twitching their phantom patterns. Thermal signature, Vax's voice strangled out between gasps. Increased 4,000%. Every scanner in the system can see us now. We are, he gagged. Broadcasting our position like, do not care, Thorn growled through clenched teeth. His vision cleared as his body adjusted to the crushing acceleration. Hide and seek's over. Now we run. The speaking tube rattled. Jean's voice, thin with terror, Captain, the apex is responding. Oh God, she's opening. Thorn's eyes found the grainy monitor above the console. The image quality was garbage, analog video from a mechanical camera bolted to the stern, but he could see enough. The dreadnought's belly split open like a wound, darkness within darkness, and from that abyss poured a swarm. Hundreds of them. Sleek chrome bodies catching starlight, moving with impossible coordination. Hornet-class interceptor drones. Each one smaller than the Mule's cockpit but infinitely faster, infinitely more agile. They formed patterns, geometric perfection that hurt to watch, mathematics made flesh. Probability of interception. Vax's voice climbed toward hysteria. 99.99%. Time to contact, 180 seconds. We cannot, the equations are, this is already solved. We have lost. We have already lost. Shut up, Thorn snarled. He hauled on the wheel, felt the ship respond sluggishly under the brutal acceleration. They've not equations. They've targets. The wheel fought him. At these speeds, without computer assistance, every correction was a wrestling match. The mule wanted to fly straight, her mass and momentum resisting change. Thorn threw his weight against the yoke, biceps bulging, and wrenched her nose 5 degrees to port. Pain lanced through his shoulders. The joints in his spine popped. Jean, he shouted into the tube. Fuel mixture, rich by 10%. I need more thrust. Captain, the tolerances, do it. A pause. Then the engine note changed, climbing higher, angrier. The vibration increased until Thorn's teeth chattered. The mule was not designed for this. She was a cargo hauler, built for endurance, not speed. Pushing her like this was like sprinting a plow horse. But she ran. Thorn's world narrowed to three things: the wheel in his hands, the monitors showing pursuit vectors, and the growing ache in every muscle. Sweat poured down his face, soaking into his collar. His glasses slipped down his nose. No time to adjust them. His vision blurred, but he did not need clarity. He needed to feel the ship, to read her groans and shudders, to sense what she could take and what would break her. The drones closed in. Chrome locusts against the black. Their formation was hypnotic, perfect spacing, perfect timing, a hive mind executing a kill pattern without hesitation or error. Vax's fingers twitched weakly against the armrest, trying to type on keyboards no longer there. 70 seconds. They are dividing into pursuit groups. Classic pincer formation. Optimal angles of approach. They will bracket us from, see it, Thorn grunted. His arms burned. Every correction sent white-hot pain shooting through his shoulders. The wheel bucked against his grip, hydraulic feedback threatening to dislocate his wrists. He braced his boots against the deck, using his legs, his back, every pound of mass he possessed. The ship groaned. Metal screamed. This was what Vax's people never understood: ships were not machines. They were living things. The mule had personality, had limits, had pride. She was telling him how much she could take, whispering through every vibration and creak. A little more, she said. I can give you a little more. 40 seconds, Vax whispered. The Ilari had gone pale as milk, violet veins standing out on his temples. Captain, I must inform you, statistical analysis indicates, there, Thorn interrupted. Ahead, visible through the viewport, a gray smudge against the black. Thick and murky, like smoke frozen in space. Ionized gas and cosmic dust, remnants of some ancient stellar nursery. A nebula fragment, dense enough to scatter sensors, blind lasers, confuse targeting systems. The door. I see the door. Thorn yanked the wheel hard over. The mule tilted, inertia trying to tear her apart. Rivets popped with sounds like gunfire. Something in the starboard bulkhead cracked, a support beam giving way, but she held. No. Vax found his voice, shrill with panic. The particulate density will destroy external sensors. The abrasive index will strip antennas. We will be blind. Blind, and so will they. Thorn aimed the mule's nose straight at the nebula's heart. That's the point. The drones adjusted, their formation rippling as they recalculated intercept vectors. But they were seconds too slow. The iron mule hit the cloud at full burn, and gray swallowed them whole. Impact. Billions of particles slammed against the hull at relativistic speeds. The sound was deafening, a constant roar like standing inside a sandblaster, like hail on a tin roof amplified 1,000 times. The forward viewport disappeared under a coating of gray powder. Visibility dropped to 0. Darkness. Complete and absolute. Sensors offline, Jean's voice crackled through static. Radar's showing nothing but snow. Captain, I'm blind here. Good, Thorn muttered. He released one hand from the wheel long enough to wipe his glasses on his sleeve. Useless gesture, they fogged immediately. He put them aside, relying on his naked, aging eyes. The instrument panel glowed amber in the murk. Analog gauges, mechanical indicators. A magnetic compass taped beside the altimeter with duct tape, needle spinning wildly as the cloud's ionization played havoc with the field. He flew by memory. By instinct. The asteroid belt they navigated earlier was roughly spherical, he'd seen the shape on his paper charts. The nebula fragment sat at its heart, a bubble of gas 3 kilometers across. If he held this heading for 90 seconds, compensated for drift, watched the chrono. The ticking. Loud in the sudden quiet. His mechanical chronometer, counting down each second with metronomic precision. Tick. 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 Beside him, Vax uncurled from his crash position. The Ilari's suit had dimmed to conserve power, leaving his face in shadow. Only his eyes glowed faintly, those strange lilac orbs scanning readouts on his internal HUD. The pursuit has scattered, Vax said slowly. Disbelief colored his monotone. Their target lock is broken. The ionization is interfering with their quantum sensors. They cannot find us. Told you. Thorn's shoulders screamed as he made a minute adjustment to the heading. The wheel was slick with sweat under his palms. Sometimes you need to fight dirty. For 30 seconds, they drifted through gray limbo. The roar of particles became background noise. Thorn's breathing slowed. His heartbeat steadied. This might work. They might actually, Captain. Jean's voice, strained. I'm picking up active ultrasound. Multiple sources, surrounding us. They're re-using echolocation. Thorn's gut went cold. Where? Everywhere. They formed a net. They not searching randomly, they tightening a perimeter. Hurting us. Analyzing tactical pattern, Vax said, fingers resuming their phantom typing. His head tilted, processing. This is efficient. Optimal. They have abandoned visual pursuit and adapted to environmental conditions. The exit vectors from this cloud are being systematically blocked. They are forcing us toward a predetermined exit point. The door is closing, Thorn finished. He opened the door with desperate cleverness, and the swarm was slamming it shut with cold logic. Rust and pistons. The chronometer ticked. 40 seconds until they cleared the cloud. The mule could not stay inside forever, the abrasive particles were slowly stripping their hull, grinding through paint and primer, working toward structural plating. Every second cost them armor, heat shielding, protection. But outside, the drones waited. There is something else, Vax said quietly. His eyes tracked data streams only he could see. An anomaly in their behavior. Multiple opportunities for lethal engagement have been ignored. They employ warning shots, trajectory cutoffs, non-lethal deterrence. Why? Why what? Why are they not shooting to kill? The question hung in the recycled air. Thorn's brain, oxygen deprived and running on adrenaline fumes, ground through the implications. The swarm was ruthlessly efficient. They did not play games. They did not toy with prey. Every action served a purpose. If they were not killing. They want the ship intact, Thorn said slowly. Horror crept up his spine. They want us alive. For assimilation. Vax's voice dropped to a whisper. They want my database. The archive codes. They want to study human neural architecture. To add us to their collective. His breathing quickened. I will become a node. A terminal. My consciousness fragmented and distributed across their network. Not death. Worse than death. Eternal slavery to, not happening. Thorn checked the chrono. 20 seconds to the edge. His mind raced, calculating angles, vectors, possibilities. The drones were smart. Coordinated. Operating on logic and probability. Which meant they could be surprised. Strap in tight, he said. Both of you. Captain, what are you? Thorn reached across the console and flipped 3 switches in sequence. The gravitational compensators, already damaged, barely functional, went completely offline. Red warning lights flared. The ship's stabilization systems died. Then he grabbed the wheel with both hands and yanked it straight toward his chest. The iron mule screamed. Every bolt shuddered. Every plate groaned. Thorn's weight crushed into the harness as the ship pitched past vertical, continuing the rotation. The world spun. His inner ear howled in confusion. Jean's voice on the tube became a continuous wail of terror. Simultaneously, Thorn slammed the maneuvering thrusters to full reverse. The ship lurched, momentum fighting inertia, trying to tear herself apart. A sound like a cannon shot, rivets popping, somewhere aft. A spray of sparks from the ceiling as a conduit failed. But the mule obeyed. She completed the Immelmann. A half-loop with a roll, a maneuver designed for atmospheric fighters, utterly insane for a heavy cargo hauler in space. For 3 seconds, she flew backward through the cloud, her velocity maintained but her direction reversed. The G-forces peaked. 9 times Earth gravity. Thorn's vision went red, then black. His spine compressed. His organs shifted. Somewhere, Jean screamed. Vax made no sound, consciousness gone, body limp. Thorn held on. The forces ebbed. Thorn gasped, sucking air, vision clearing in stages. They punched out of the cloud's far side. Stars blazed ahead. And below, where moments ago had been a head, the drone net scattered in chaos. The Hornets had been moving on perfect intercept vectors, expecting a target in front. Mathematics and physics and probability had painted a clear picture. The mule would exit the cloud at this location, at this velocity, and they would be waiting. But the mule had exited backward, from above, at the same velocity but reversed heading. 3 drones collided. Chrome bodies crumpled, fusion cores breaching in silent flowers of white fire. Others scattered, recalculating, algorithms struggling to adapt to input that made no logical sense. Thorn leveled the ship with shaking hands. Pain radiated through his shoulders, his back, his compressed spine. His vision doubled. He blinked hard, forcing focus. Jean, he croaked into the tube. Status. Alive, came the shaky reply. Hull integrity at 70%. We've got microfractures on the starboard side, and the dorsal antenna array is gone. But we alive. Vax. Silence from the co-pilot seat. The Alari hung limp in his harness, eyes closed, breathing shallow. Alive, but unconscious. His hollow bones had not handled the forces well. Thorn allowed himself 3 seconds of wild triumph. 3 seconds to feel the adrenaline, the savage joy of having violated every flight safety regulation in the book and survived. 3 seconds to, the apex filled the viewport. It had not chased them. Had not needed to. The dreadnought had simply calculated every possible exit from the cloud, weighted by probability, and positioned itself at the most likely point. Which was here. The geometric nightmare blocked out half the visible universe. Perfect black cube, edges sharp enough to cut vacuum itself. City-sized. Incomprehensible. Its surface did not reflect starlight, it absorbed it, drank it, a void in the shape of order. Thorn's hands found the wheel by instinct. His eyes darted across instruments, searching for options. There, a gap. Narrow corridor between the apex's gravity well and a dense asteroid field. Barely wide enough for the mule, but possible. Maybe. Jean. His voice was raw. Everything to engines. Everything. Lights, life support, gravity, I do not care. Give me thrust. Captain, if I shut down life support, we'll be dead in 5 minutes anyway. Do it. The bridge went dark. Emergency lights died. The amber glow of the Nixie tubes was the only illumination, painting Thorn's face in hellish orange. The temperature plummeted instantly without climate control. His breath fogged. But the engines roared. The mule accelerated. Thorn aimed her nose at the gap, at freedom, at survival. The distance to the apex increased. 1 kilometer. 2. The dreadnought's gravity grapples began to spin up, violet light bleeding from its geometric edges, but they were slow. Ponderous. The mule was small and fast and, the ship lurched. Not an explosion. Something worse. A dull, grinding crunch that Thorn felt in his bones. The deck tilted. His glasses, sitting loose on the console, slid off and shattered on the floor. What? He began. For massive harpoons punched through the stern plating. Monocrystalline steel, thick as a man's torso, driven by hydraulic rams powerful enough to crack asteroids. They tore through armor like paper, through bulkheads, through the sacred spaces of the ship. The mule jerked to a halt. Thorn's head slammed into the console. Pain exploded behind his eyes. Blood, hot and copper-tasting, filled his mouth. Heat debitten his tongue. The world spun. Through his concussion-blurred vision, he watched in horror as mechanical claws began crawling up the harpoon cables. Hand over hand, pulling the apex closer, reeling them in like a fish on a line. No, he whispered. No, 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 beside him, Vax stirred. The Ilari's eyes snapped open, glowing violet. His head turned with mechanical precision toward Thorn. His mouth opened. But the voice that emerged was not his. Compliance, the swarm said through Vax's throat. Flat. Emotionless. Absolute. Resistance is statistical anomaly. Prepare for integration. On Vax's visor, a single symbol blazed, a red eye, unblinking, watching. The synchro virus had arrived. The harpoons pulsed. Violet light bled from the steel shafts buried in the iron mule's stern, rhythmic as a heartbeat, beautiful as cancer. Thorn watched the infection spread across his instruments. Screens flickered, displaying fractal patterns, mathematical nightmares spiraling inward, repeating, consuming. The amber glow of the Nixie tubes shifted to sickly purple. The synchro virus was uploading. Get it out. Vax shrieked. The Ilari convulsed in his harness, back arching until his spine threatened to snap. His neuroports flared white-hot, the chrome jacks overloading as hostile code flooded through every connection his suit maintained with the ship's network. It's inside, it's rewriting, critical logic error. It is erasing, his voice fractured into static. Thorn's hands found the nearest harpoon cable before conscious thought caught up. The braided steel was hot, radiating heat from the data stream coursing through it. He grabbed it anyway, calloused palms sizzling, and hauled with every ounce of strength in his massive frame. The cable did not budge. Monocrystalline steel, tensile strength rated for towing asteroids. His skin peeled. The smell of burning flesh filled the bridge, his own meat cooking. He released with a curse, stumbling into the console. His palms were raw, blistering, marked with the cable's weave pattern like a brand. Software firewalls were useless. The swarm had cracked military-grade encryption in nanoseconds. This was not a battle of code anymore. This was surgery. Thorn lunged for the emergency handset. Pure copper wire, mechanical relay, immune to digital interference. He cranked the handle, ancient generator building charge, and the connection crackled to life. Mara. His voice came out ragged, raw. Engine room. Cut the main trunk. Cut it now. Static. Distance and interference turning his words to noise. He cranked harder, knuckles white around the handle. Cut the cables. Physical disconnect. Do you copy? A burst of sound. Mara's voice, distorted but certain, copy, Captain. Cutting, the line went dead. 50 feet aft, in the sweltering hell of the engine compartment, Mara Volkova already had the axe raised. The fire axe hung on the safety board, red handle gleaming under emergency lights. 8 pounds of forged steel, edge honed sharp enough to split bone. She grabbed at the second the harpoon struck, muscle memory overriding thought. In her world, problems came in two varieties, things she could weld, and things she could break. This needed breaking. The server trunk sprawled across the deck plates like an exposed nerve, fiber optic cables thick as her thigh, bundled with zip ties and electrical tape, pulsing with that wrong violet light. Data flowed through those lines. Alien code. Poison. Mara lifted the axe above her head, shoulders bunching beneath her grease-stained coverall. She did not hesitate. Did not calculate angles or probabilities. Hesitation was how you lost fingers to machinery, how you watched friends die while smart people debated solutions. She swung. The blade bit deep. Cables severed with a sound like screaming, high-pitched frequencies her ears should not register. Sparks erupted in a fountain of white-hot light. The trunk writhed, electromagnetic feedback making the severed ends dance like serpents. Smoke boiled up, acrid and chemical. Not enough. The violet pulse continued through the remaining fibers, dimmer but persistent. Mara ripped the axe free and struck again. Then again. Fourth blow severed the final connection. The trunk went dark and still, cables separated completely, spilling their optical guts across the deck. The engine room plunged into darkness. On the bridge, Thorne heard the impact through the hull vibrations. A dull thud transmitted through metal and rivets, traveling the mule's skeleton. Then silence. The Nixie tubes died. The hum of transformers, that constant electrical song he lived with for decades, cut out mid-note. Every system crashed simultaneously. Life support, navigation, communications. The ship went from barely functioning to corpse in a heartbeat. Gravity vanished. Thorne's stomach lurched as his boots lost their magnetic hold. The deck fell away, or he fell up, impossible to tell without visual reference. His body went weightless, drifting, decades of instinct flooding in to compensate. He grabbed for a handhold, found the chair's armrest, anchored himself. "Jean," he called into the darkness. "Status." I'm here, Captain." The navigator's voice came from somewhere to port, trembling. "I'm holding on. I think we stopped it. The virus. Cut off mid-upload, isolated in dead circuits, unable to spread. They killed the ship to save her soul. Pyrrhic did not begin to cover it. Beside Thorne, Vax made a choking sound. The Ilari had stopped convulsing, but something was wrong. His pristine white suit, powered by miniature servos and processors, had locked up the instant the power died. Without electricity, the smart fabric became rigid, dead weight crushing the hollow-boned frame within. "Vax." Thorne reached out, found the alien's shoulder. "Solid as concrete. Can you move?" "Negative." The word squeezed out through clenched teeth. "Suit, structural integrity mode. Cannot, flex. Trapped." A coffin. Vax was trapped in his own clothes, unable to move anything except his jaw. Thorne released him and pulled a chemical flare from his belt. He cracked it, sharp snap of glass breaking, phosphorus igniting, and red light flooded the bridge. Shadows danced. Debris floated everywhere, tools, paper charts, drops of blood from Thorne's burned palms gathering into trembling spheres. The iron mule was dead. They were invisible to sensors now, nothing but cold metal drifting in the void. To the swarm, they ceased to exist. Thorne allowed himself 3 seconds of grim satisfaction. He beaten them. Outsmarted their logic with brute force analog simplicity. The harpoons protruding through the aft hull were dormant, violet pulse extinguished. "Jean," he said, voice steady despite the pain radiating from his hands. "Can you see the apex?" A pause. The sound of Jean pushing off something, drifting to the forward viewport. It's. Captain, it's still there. Range approximately 5 kilometers. Not moving. Watching us die, Thorn muttered. He wiped sweat from his forehead with his forearm, unwilling to use his ruined palms. Waiting to see if we suffocate or freeze first. Incorrect assessment. Vax's monotone cut through the red-lit gloom. Even immobilized, even in agony, the Ilari's analytical mind continued processing. The Apex operates on efficiency protocols. It will not wait. Assimilation failed. Next logical step, elimination of non-compliant units. It's going to shoot us, Jean whispered. As if summoned by the words, the dreadnought moved. Through the viewport, visible even in the darkness, armored shutters slid open along the cube's forward face. Emitters appeared, massive weapon ports, each one capable of vaporizing cities. Blue light began to build in their depths. Faint at first, then brighter. Plasma accumulating, fusion charges priming, capacitors storing enough energy to punch through a planet's crust. Thorn's gut went cold. How long? Analyzing thermal buildup and electromagnetic signature, Vax said. Numbers scrolled across his visor, visible to him alone. Plasma impact in 120 seconds. Margin of error, negligible. Our hull will not withstand the initial strike. We will be vaporized. 2 minutes to live. Thorn pushed off the chair, trying to orient himself, and pain exploded in his left leg. He'd forgotten, during the zero-G confusion, during Vax's screaming, during everything, he'd forgotten the shrapnel embedded in his thigh from when his head hit the console. The wound had not mattered in the chaos. It mattered now. Captain. Jean's voice spiked with panic. Thorn twisted, saw his leg. Saw the jagged metal shard jutting from his quadricep, 3 inches of serrated steel driven deep into muscle. Blood gathered around it in a slow-motion sphere, dark and viscous, drifting away from his body in impossible directions. More blood leaked out with each heartbeat, forming a cloud of crimson droplets. He'd been bleeding this whole time. Had not even noticed. Rusty crankshaft, he hissed. He reached for the wound, fingers hovering over the metal. Pull it out. Leave it in. In zero-G, with no way to apply pressure, bleeding out was a matter of minutes either way. He tried to maneuver closer to the console, to grab something, anything. Put weight on the leg. His thigh refused to respond, muscle severed, nerves screaming. He spun in place instead, momentum uncontrolled, drifting helplessly away from the handholds. In atmosphere, with gravity, a crippled leg was manageable. Hobble, limp, drag yourself along. But here, without thrust, without the ability to kick off surfaces, he was as immobile as Vax in his locked suit. 100 seconds, Vax announced. Clinical. Detached. Recording their death with scientific precision. Thorn's vision swam. Blood loss or shock, did not matter which. His brain felt sluggish, thoughts coming through tar. There had to be something, some trick, some desperate gambit. His eyes found the ceiling. Or what had been the ceiling before gravity died. There, mounted in the overhead compartment, covered in decades of dust, the Vox system. Public address. Broadband ultrasonic emitter. Designed for shouting orders to crews across hull sections too loud for voice alone. Powerful transmitter. Independent power supply, chemical batteries, immune to electrical failure. Never integrated with the ship's network because Thorn did not trust digital anything. The Vox, he croaked. Blood drifted past his face, warm droplets sticking to his cheeks. We hit them with an ultrasonic pulse. Broadband noise. Overload their sensors. Make them miss. Explain, Vax demanded. Thorn's words came slower, fighting through fog. Their targeting uses precision. Clean data. We flood the spectrum with garbage. Static. Chaos. Their systems recalibrate. Aim drifts. Even a meter makes them miss at this range. Probability of success. Better than 0. Silence. Vax processing. Calculating. The blue glow outside brightened, plasma charges nearing critical mass. 70 seconds. The Vox is 3 meters distant in current orientation. Manual operation required, 2 frequency dials, analog resonance matching. I can calculate the required settings, but I cannot reach the device. Neither could Thorn. The Vox box sat recessed in what had been the ceiling, accessible only if you could fly up there and anchor yourself. His wounded leg made that impossible. Could not generate thrust. Could not orient. One push and he'd spin uselessly. Gene, Thorn said. His navigator floated near the forward console, face pale, eyes wide with terror. You're going to have to do it. I see not. Captain, I do not know how to, you do not need to. Vax will tell you. He'll calculate the frequency. You'll turn the dials where he says. The dials are mechanical, Vax interjected. Stiff. Corroded from decades without maintenance. They require significant torque. Navigator Gene's grip strength is insufficient. Thorn's brain, oxygen deprived and fading, ground through possibilities. Gene could not turn the dials. Thorn could not reach them. Vax could not move. Unless. Gene, Thorn said slowly. Get Vax to the Vox. Push him up there. What? But he's locked up. I know. But his suit's rigid now. Stable. You use him as an anchor. He tells you what to do, you do it. His brain, your hands. 45 seconds, Vax said. Captain, this plan has no time for probabilities. Thorn's shout cost him. His vision darkened at the edges. Gene, move. Now. The navigator unfroze. Training overrode panic, barely. He kicked off his console, crossed the bridge in 2 graceless bounds, and grabbed Vax's rigid form. The Alari was tall, over 2 meters, and the locked suit added mass. Gene wrapped both arms around Vax's torso and kicked hard off the deck. They rose toward the Vox in a slow tumble. Gene's trajectory was wrong, angled too far to starboard. He cursed, grabbed a ceiling pipe, corrected. Pulled them level with the dusty box. 20 seconds, Vax said. His voice remained flat even as death approached. Gene, opened the access panel. For screws, Philip's head. Gene's hands shook so badly he dropped the screwdriver twice. Caught it on the 3rd try. Started working on the screws. First one stripped, thread rusted. Second came free. Third. Fourth. The panel swung open, revealing a nightmare of ancient wiring and 2 massive dial knobs. 10 seconds. Outside, the blue glow reached peak intensity. The Apex's main batteries were charged. Firing sequence initiated. Left dial. Vax barked. Clockwise rotation. 4 full turns. Gene grabbed the left knob with both hands. Threw his weight into it. The dial did not move. Decades of corrosion had frozen it solid. ICA not, use the screwdriver. Lever. Gene jammed the screwdriver shaft against the dial's edge, using it as a pry bar. Muscles straining. The dial moved. 1 turn. 2. 3 seconds. Right dial. Counterclockwise. 3 turns. Gene's hands flew. Right dial, loose, spun easily. Too easily. 3 turns, 4, stop. Return 1/4 rotation. Gene adjusted. Vax's eyes tracked the analog needle visible inside the box. Watching frequencies align. Waiting for resonance. Now. Gene slammed the activation lever. The Vox screamed. Not sound, something beyond sound. Ultrasonic frequencies tearing through the electromagnetic spectrum, billions of watts of acoustic energy broadcast in every direction. The hull vibrated. Thorne's bones resonated. His teeth ached. The bridge glass developed hairline cracks as the pressure wave passed through. Outside, the apex fired. Twin plasma beams lanced out. Superheated matter moving at near light speed, temperature measured in millions of degrees. Enough energy to slag continents. They missed. Not by much. 5 meters to starboard, close enough that the mule's hull plating glowed red from radiant heat. But a miss was a miss. The beams carved past them into the empty void, dissipating slowly over kilometers. Thorne watched the blue glow in the Apex-S weapons ports dim. Capacitors emptied. Firing sequence complete. It would take the dreadnought 40 seconds to recharge for a second shot. The Vox continued screaming, ultrasonic chaos flooding their sensors, making a second target lock impossible. They survived. Thorne let his head fall against the bulkhead. His leg was numb now, shock setting in. Blood loss making the world distant and unreal. They were still drifting. Still powerless. Still dying, albeit slower. But they survived the blast. Gene floated near the ceiling, sobbing with relief, hands still locked on the Vox controls. Vax hung rigid beside him, violet eyes dim but alive, analytical mind already processing next moves. 53 seconds until weapon cycle completes, the Alari said. The ultrasonic pulse prevents accurate targeting, but they will fire blind. Saturation pattern. Probability of evading a second volley, minimal. Thorne closed his eyes. Exhaustion pulled at him, heavy as gravity. His hands throbbed. His leg had gone cold. Blood continued its slow drift through the cabin, painting the air red. Keep the noise going, he whispered. Make them waste ammunition. Every shot they miss. He did not finish. Consciousness was slipping, blood pressure dropping, brain starving for oxygen his body could not deliver. Captain. Gene's voice, distant. Captain, stay with us. But the darkness was easier. Quieter. Thorne let himself sink into it, trusting his crew would hold the line. Trusting they'd find a way through. Trusting in analog chaos one more time. The blue light consumed everything. Vax hung suspended in Gene's trembling grip, his suit a rigid prison, his body a useless ornament. The apex of logic filled the viewport, geometric perfection preparing to erase their existence with mathematical certainty. Plasma capacitors charged with building intensity, washing the bridge in cerulean radiance. Death timer, 47 seconds. Captain Thorne's instructions are unclear, Vax stated, voice flat despite the cortisol flooding his system. His analytical mind catalogued the situation, oxygen reserves at 18%, hull temperature dropping 3 degrees per minute, blood loss from the captain's wound approaching critical threshold. The Vox device requires, he stopped. Through the red chemical flare's dim glow, he saw the problem. The ancient emitter's access panel gaped open, revealing its entrails, copper wires green with oxidation, connections corroded by decades of neglect. Standard interfaces were absent. No wireless protocols. No plug-and-play modules. The battery sat isolated, its terminals bright against the decay, but the circuit was broken. To activate the device, someone would need to physically twist bare copper together. Complete the circuit with manual labor. With hands. Incorrect data. Irrational design. Barbaric engineering. Essential. The connectors have degraded beyond functionality, Vax announced. His fingers twitched in their phantom typing pattern, seeking solutions in networks no longer there. Direct wire manipulation required. I require, his environmental suit gloves were too thick. Designed for sterile diplomacy, not mechanical surgery. The bulky material made his already useless hands into clubs. Gene. His monotone cracked slightly. Remove the gloves. Both hands. The navigator's eyes widened. But counselor, without environmental protection, now. Gene obeyed, fingers working the seal releases. The gloves came away with a hiss of equalizing pressure. For the first time in 70 standard years, Vax's bare skin touched unfiltered air. The cold struck immediately. Not the controlled chill of climate systems, but the raw absence of heat, the iron mule bleeding warmth into vacuum. His alabaster fingers, evolved for holographic interfaces, recoiled from the sensation. Dirty air. Recycled oxygen tasting of oil and ozone. Temperature 18 degrees below his species' comfort threshold. His sensory atrophy made everything overwhelming, textures too sharp, temperatures too extreme. 32 seconds, he heard himself say. Thorne's voice drifted up from below, weak and thready. Copper, twist clockwise, 3 turns minimum. Vax extended his trembling fingers toward the Vox's exposed wiring. His hands were wrong for this, designed by genetic engineers for data entry, not mechanical work. Too long, too thin, bones hollow as bird skeletons. But they possessed one advantage his suit lacked, dexterity. He grasped the first wire. The copper was rough, oxidized, coated in decades of grime. His pristine skin registered each microscopic irregularity with painful clarity. Revulsion rose in his throat, direct contact with dead matter, with corroded metal, with the accumulated filth of analog machinery. Suppressing the impulse required conscious effort. His species considered such contact vulgar. Primitive. Yet primitive solutions were required when civilization's tools had failed. He stripped the wire's insulation with his thumbnail. Skin tore. Pain sensors fired. He ignored them and reached for the second wire. 20 seconds. His fingers worked faster. The calculations were simple: current flow, resistance values, connection integrity. But translating theory into physical action proved difficult. The wires refused to cooperate, slipping from his grip, cutting his palms with their sharp edges. Blood welled up, his own now, violet against the copper. Lubricant. Sacrifice. He twisted the strands together, 3 full rotations as instructed, crushing them with strength he had not known his frame possessed. A spark jumped between his fingers. Electricity. His nerves screamed. On the Vox panel, a single yellow LED flickered to life. Power active. 10 seconds. Broadcast what? Gene's voice pitched toward hysteria. What do we transmit? Thorne's answer came as a wheeze from the deck below. One word, barely audible: jazz. Vax's eyes found the cassette mechanism built into the Vox's archaic frame. A magnetic tape protruded from the slot, its label hand-written in Thorne's angular script: free jazz / the chaos. Incomprehensible. Irrational. A recording of acoustic instruments played without mathematical structure, without harmonic rules, without pattern. Vax had overheard fragments during the journey, saxophone wails and percussion chaos that offended every principle of organized sound. Music designed to be unpredictable. The apex sought patterns. Its quantum processors analyzed data streams, predicted trajectories, calculated outcomes. Logic required structure. Order. Mathematics. Jazz offered none of those things. 5 seconds. Vax's bleeding finger slammed the play button. The Vox screamed into space. Not words. Not code. Not any signal a machine would recognize as communication. Pure acoustic chaos, saxophone improvisation spiraling through impossible progressions, drums hammering rhythms that defied tempo, all of it captured on oxidized magnetic tape and broadcast at maximum power across every frequency the emitter could reach. The apex heard it. Through the viewport, Vax watched the dreadnought's response. The blue glow stuttered. Plasma charges fluctuated, their perfect synchronization disrupted. The weapon ports dimmed, brightened, dimmed again. Detecting processing anomaly, Vax reported, his analytical training asserting itself even now. The Apex-S quantum arrays are attempting pattern recognition on the signal. They cannot isolate repeating structures because none exist. Error cascades building exponentially. The saxophone screamed higher. The drums crashed without warning. Human creativity bottled in analog format, immune to logic, resistant to analysis. The Dreadnought-S systems began to fail. Weapon ports went dark completely. The Hornet drones scattered, their perfect formation dissolving into chaos as central coordination collapsed. The Apex itself listed slightly, its geometric perfection marred by uncontrolled drift. Critical processing cycle error confirmed, Vax stated, reading thermal signatures through his suit's emergency optics. Irrationality buffer overflow. The AI has encountered input outside its computational parameters. It is, he paused, searching for the correct terminology. It is frozen. A blue screen of death, measured in cubic kilometers of unresponsive metal. The galaxy's most sophisticated AI brought down by 70-year-old magnetic tape and human improvisation. They had survived. The realization took 3 full seconds to process. They were alive. The Apex was disabled. The mission could, Captain. Gene's shout cut through the saxophone's wail. Vax's attention snapped to the deck below. Thorn lay motionless in the spreading pool of his own blood, face gray as ash, lips blue from hypoxia. The chemical flare's red light painted the scene in crimson and shadow, making the captain appear already dead. Heart rate 42 and falling, Vax's suit sensors reported. Blood pressure 70/40. Hypovolemic shock stage 3. Time to cardiac arrest, 4 minutes, 17 seconds. Gene descended, abandoning Vax to float in his rigid suit. The navigator's hands hovered uselessly over Thorn's wound, unwilling to touch, unable to help. Autodoc. Vax called down, fighting to keep his voice level. Activate medical protocols. Synthesize clotting agents. Begin transfusion sequence. The power's dead, Gene sobbed. Everything's dead. The med bay is offline. I do not, ICA not, medical technology required electricity. Laser sutures needed power. Nanogel depended on active processors. The Iron Mule's entire advanced medical infrastructure was nothing but dead weight without functioning systems. Vax's mind presented the conclusion with clinical precision: without intervention, Captain Elias Thorne would expire within 4 minutes. Available resources, none. Probability of survival, 0. End of line. He watched Thorne's chest rise and fall in shallow, irregular gasps. The human who navigated them through impossible odds using nothing but paper charts and mechanical intuition. Who wrestled a multi-ton vessel with his bare hands. Who trusted Vax enough to place their lives in his calculations. Who called him by name, not rank. Thorne's hand moved. Trembling fingers pulled something from a breast pocket, a dented tin that rattled softly. He held it up toward Vax with the last of his strength. Old-fashioned way. The words cost him. Blood flecked his lips. The tin fell. Gene caught it, pried the lid open. Inside, a steel needle, crude and manual. A spool of black thread. A chemical lighter. Surgeon's tools from before digital medicine. From before Vax's species had evolved past manual intervention. I do not understand, Jean whispered. But Vax did. He stared at the needle, his alien eyes processing the implications. Physical suturing. Flesh pierced with metal. Wound edges pulled together by hand-tied knots. Blood and tissue manipulated directly. Barbarism. Salvation. His species had not performed manual surgery in 10,000 years. His education included no practical medical training, only theoretical models of biological systems. His hands had never touched another's flesh, never held instruments of healing. He was the worst possible candidate for this task. He was the only candidate for this task. Jean. His voice emerged steadier than he expected. Bring the tin up here. I require, he stopped himself. Corrected. I will perform the procedure. You. Jean's disbelief was audible. Counselor, you see not even move. Incorrect. I can move my arms. My hands. That proves sufficient. He flexed his bleeding fingers, testing their range despite the suit's weight. Captain Thorne requires suturing within 3 minutes or he expires. You lack the necessary knowledge. I possess theoretical understanding of human musculature. Therefore, I must, his throat constricted. The words came harder. I must touch him. Jean floated up with the tin. The needle gleamed under the chemical flare's light, its eye threaded with black silk. Primitive. Effective. Terrifying. Vax's fingers closed around it. The metal was cold. Sharp. Real in a way his holographic interfaces had never been. Lower me to the captain. Jean maneuvered Vax's rigid form downward. The suit's weight made them clumsy, momentum difficult to control. They nearly crashed into the console before Jean caught a handhold and steadied them. Thorne drifted below, unconscious now, bleeding continuing its slow spread through zero gravity. The shrapnel wound gaped obscenely, torn quadricep muscle, severed fascia, damaged vessels pumping violet-red spheres into the cabin air. Vax had never seen human anatomy outside of medical texts. The reality was visceral. Wet. Organic. His species had long ago abandoned such biological messiness for clean, digital existence. He was going to plunge his hands into it. The nausea hit immediately. His stomach heaved. Ilari physiology, adapted to nutrient pastes and sterile environments, rebelled against the proximity to blood and damaged tissue. The smell, copper and iron and something else, something uniquely alive, triggered every disgust response his evolution possessed. He breathed through his mouth. Counted prime numbers. Forced his analytical mind to override his limbic system. This was not meat. This was geometry. Topology. The problem of reconnecting separated tissue along optimal stress lines. Calculations he could perform. Mathematics he understood. His hands moved toward the wound. The first touch of blood against his skin was electric. Warm. Viscous. His fingers instinctively recoiled, but he forced them steady. He positioned the needle against the deepest layer, the muscle tissue requiring reconstruction before surface closure. Pierce. Pull. Pierce. Pull. The needle punctured human flesh with a sound his audio receptors registered as distinctly wet. His hands shook. The first stitch was crooked, uneven, amateur. But it held. He worked faster. His analytical mind kicked into gear, calculating thread tension, spacing stitches according to wound biomechanics he dememorized from database entries decades ago. Theory became practice. Knowledge became action. Pierce. Pull. Pierce. Pull. Blood coated his arms to the elbows. His pristine white suit turned crimson. Jean held the flashlight steady, occasionally steadying Vax's locked torso as momentum threatened to send him drifting. The saxophone wailed through the Vox, playing its chaotic accompaniment. Thorne had loved this music. Called it beautiful. Vax began to understand why. There was rhythm in his movements now. Not planned, not calculated, but felt, his hands finding their own pattern independent of conscious thought. The needle became an extension of his fingers. The thread a connection between life and death. He stopped seeing meat. Started seeing purpose. The final layer of fascia closed. Dermis next. His stitches grew more uniform, more confident. Muscle memory building in real time, his elongated fingers discovering capabilities their evolutionary design had not anticipated. The last stitch. He tied it off with a surgeon's knot, 2 wraps, pull tight, 2 more perpendicular, pull tighter. Cut the thread with Jean's borrowed multi-tool. The wound was closed. Not pretty. Not medical grade. But sealed. Functional. Alive. Thorne's breathing deepened. His color improved, gray becoming pale, pale becoming pink. The bleeding had stopped. Heart rate 58 and rising, Vax's suit reported. Blood pressure stabilizing. Survival probability, 94%. Vax leaned against the bulkhead, his rigid suit making the motion awkward. His hands trembled violently now that the adrenaline was fading. Blood covered him completely, under his fingernails, in the creases of his palms, staining his silver hair where he pushed it from his eyes. He had saved a life. Not by accessing databases. Not by interfacing with medical AI. Not by calculating optimal treatment protocols. By putting his hands in blood and flesh and making them work. For the first time in 115 years of existence, Vax understood what it meant to be present in the physical world. To act rather than observe. To create rather than calculate. He stared at his stained hands in the flickering light. Survival probability, he whispered to no one. 100%. The saxophone screamed its approval. 10 years. The chronometer on the new ship's bridge marked the passage with mechanical precision. Not digital readouts, but an honest analog dial, gears and springs and human craftsmanship. Vax sat in the captain's chair, his posture relaxed in ways the old counselor could never have managed. His diplomatic shell was gone, replaced by a practical jacket with rolled sleeves. Scars marked his hands, pale lines where copper had cut, darker patches where electricity had burned. He wore them openly. The bridge combined old and new, holographic displays beside mechanical gauges, voice-responsive computers next to manual override levers. His crew was mixed, humans, Ilari, 3 other species working in practiced coordination. Captain. The young lieutenant's voice carried professional concern. Ion storm detected on current trajectory. Magnitude 7. Recommend course adjustment per safety protocols. The ship's AI chimed agreement. A holographic route appeared, detouring around the danger. 3 weeks added to their journey. 0 risk. Perfect logic. Vax pulled a case from his pocket. Dented tin, scratched and worn. Inside, thick horn-rimmed glasses, prescription too strong for his eyes, arms adjusted for a broader skull. He put them on anyway. The bridge came into focus through someone else's lenses, slightly blurred, imperfect, but real. Honest. His hands, those long, scarred pianist's fingers, rested on the manual flight controls. He disengaged the autopilot with a satisfying mechanical clack. Captain. The lieutenant's confusion was evident. The probability of shield damage in the storm exceeds acceptable. To hell with the calculations, Lieutenant. Vax adjusted the glasses on his nose. Through them, he could almost see the old bridge, chemical flares and blood and desperate jazz. Could almost hear Thorn's voice, sometimes you gotta play off key. The computer hears only numbers, Vax continued. His hands gripped the wheel, feeling its resistance, its weight, its truth. It cannot hear the music of the spheres. It does not understand that survival requires more than optimal routes. He angled the ship's nose toward the storm. The ion clouds boiled ahead, violet and angry and irrational. Sometimes, Vax said, his lips curling into a crooked half-smile, he learned from a dead man, to survive, you have to play a false note. The mule's glasses slipped slightly. He pushed them up with one blood-stained, scarred, perfectly capable hand. And flew straight into the chaos.